Welcome to another Creative University session. I'm Peter Chadi. I'm chairman of Creative University and chairman of Creative Media. And I have my guest today, Rick Farman. Welcome. It's good to have you as being part of Creative University.
Great to be here.
Yeah, great to have you. Hold on, let me turn up my volume a little bit. Okay, so I can hear you. Where are you calling in from?
I am currently in Amelia Island, Florida. I've been here for about 3 months with my family, but I live in Berkeley, California. I'm just here spending time during this COVID world where you can kind of live anywhere to a degree. And we're here because my father-in-law lives here. My father-in-law actually, interestingly, has had a great career in the music business. He owns a record label called Landslide Records. So if you're interested in kind of Southern roots rock, go check it out. It's a nice little family connection that I have around that. So we're here visiting him for extended time and head back to Berkeley, California in just a few weeks here.
Very, very cool. Great to have you. So everybody, I've known Rick now for, I don't even know how many years, probably like 5, 6, something like that. Maybe even a little bit longer than that, actually. But I'll tell you how I first met him. So Rick is co-founder of Superfly. And as you can see, he's a young guy, yet he started Superfly in 1996. So he was probably like 12, 13, something like that at the time. But Superfly, for those of you, and some of you know this, they're the creators of Bonnaroo, Outside Lands, and a number of other things that Rick will talk about. But just one little anecdote, and Rick knows this, I've attended Outside Lands probably 10 times, and my family started joining me about 3 years into me joining. So the 4 of us, because I have 2 kids, my wife and I and our 2 kids would join us every year. We would go to Outside Lands and make a trip of it from Southern California to Northern California. And it is our favorite festival on the planet. We've done it, I think, like 6, 7 times together. And it's a family ritual. So it was really hard this August not to do that. But we attended Inside Lands, which was the streaming event that you guys did, which was great too. But Rick, so that's just a little about you. I don't even know how you got from how you started to 1996 and starting Superfly. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that before we get into the topics of the day?
Yeah, sure. So I started Superfly with 3 other buddies who all met each other sort of around going to college at Tulane University in New Orleans. And New Orleans is such a place where the culture of life and entertainment and experience is so embedded in kind of almost everything you do. And me and these other guys just had a real really embrace that and wanted to make an impact on it, wanted to be involved more than just a participant. And so we started working at a really kind of world famous music club called Tipitina's. If you're not familiar with it, go check it out. It's a really special place, and it's where a lot of like the seminal New Orleans musicians sort of got started and launched, national, international careers from. And so we started working at that place, and after kind of learning the ropes, decided, to go out on our own and try and do something a little more entrepreneurial. At the beginning, it was really just around programming artists and experiences that we felt weren't happening in the city that we wanted to see happen. The initial focus was around Mardi Gras and Jazz Fest. So we had this real sort of, orientation towards special events right from the beginning. We programmed these kind of big concert series around that time, and we would utilize any kind of venue that we could find, anything that would allow for an outside promoter to come into, random places like, half covered warehouses and riverboats and old Masonic temples, and really just anywhere that we could produce shows. Once I graduated college,
so you just kind of made it up, right?
We did. I mean, our experience at the club at Tipitina's sort of taught us like the basics of booking a show, of advancing a show, of production, of how to manage a team around that stuff. So we were very lucky that we got that experience at such a young age. I was 19 at the time. My partner, who I kind of started the business with around that, was just fresh out of college, a few years older than me, and so he got this amazing job, as the booking agent there. Right out of college, and so we were young. We really, were fully, involved in every aspect, and so we were able to,
Fearless. You
yeah,
guys like had, right? Caution to the
yeah,
wind.
we were able to take that and really parlay that into just starting to produce some of our own events. We were very careful at the beginning to make sure we were doing things that we had a little bit of knowledge about, and that we were working with people who we could trust, and that we felt would give us a chance and things like that. But I think that the real thing was that we were kind of fearless in that regard, and we were just passionate. I mean, we were doing this not for any other reason than we really wanted to bring the particular bands and particular experiences to New Orleans, because we felt that was missing, and we just wanted to learn. We didn't have any design on building a business that we'd be doing as long as we have. We didn't have a grand plan. We didn't have a lot of capital. I used a couple $1,000s of my bar mitzvah money to help us get started. We all kind of put little pieces of money together.
Who came up, Rick? Who came up with the name?
So my partner, Jonathan, he had done a show at Tipitina's prior to us meeting, as kind of like a graduation thing. It's kind of how he got his job as the booking agent. That's a longer story, where the club was going through a lot of transition, and they kind of just needed somebody to sit in the seat. And he had produced this show as a graduation thing, where he had used the name Superfly for it. And a year or so later, after he had gotten that job there, and really made the most out of it. I mean, really kind of turned the club around in many ways, and made a huge difference. And then we knew people came into the club and purchased the club, and so we decided to leave and do our own thing. And so when we were trying to think about names to use, I was like, hey, that show that you did originally, people kind of remember that was a really cool show. The logo looked great on the poster. Early on for us, like, so much was honestly about the posters. We cared so much about the look and feel of the posters. We cared so much about
people still do. That's such a
putting
critical
those
part of
up on.
Coachella.
We
posters.
literally posted, I think, every telephone pole in New Orleans in the late 90s, early 2000s. I mean, we were maniacal about it. And so it really was kind of like out of this passion for how the Superfly name, sort of something that was fun, that had kind of a cool graphic look to it. We were big Curtis Mayfield fans.
There you go.
We loved the message of Curtis and everything that he stood for. And we just felt like it would be kind of a fun and meaningful, name to use, and something that we could make look really cool.
No, it's very cool. And one of the things you talked about it, like everything that all those elements stood for, including Curtis Mayfield. And one thing I've known about you and Superfly from beginning, since I learned about you guys, was that it's not just about business for you guys. It's about innovation. And we'll get into the topics, guys, but it's about innovation. It's about sustainability. It's about a lot of those kinds of things. We're going to get into mental wellness and health later on at the very end, because that's a big part of what Rick's mission is too, the tech, entertainment, but also wellness in general. So right from the beginning, the ethos and DNA was intentional.
Yeah, for sure. Look, just started with having a passion for the art and for the culture of what was surrounding us. We were really inspired early on by the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival. And if you've never been there, it's definitely one of the best festivals in the entire universe. It's very unique and special. And when you go there, you really feel just this deep connection to how the culture of a community can manifest in an entertainment experience. And so that was like one of those core things that we just saw. That it was really inspiring. We started to produce things that we felt kind of were complementary to that, or had certain of those ethos embedded into it. And we just started at the beginning, really just trying to do things anywhere we could. As I mentioned before, we became kind of a regular concert promoter. After a few years of doing that, we recognized that that was a tough business, and there was a lot of limits on the creativity that we wanted to express. There were some business limitations to that. And that's kind of what led us to transform into becoming a festival producer and creator. That was really the big pivot in our business. Initially, was from being a concert promoter to really focusing on this special event thing where we could have a much bigger impact on the actual experience itself, where we could actually build a brand and an IP, intellectual property that we could own.
Yeah.
From there, we've built a bunch of other businesses that are complementary to that. But that was really the first sort of thing that transformed us from being a nice thing to do out of college and sustain ourselves at a very base level, to being something that really has carried us in many ways through a 20 plus year career.
And what was your first festival?
First festival actually was Bonnaroo. So,
Okay.
as a precursor to that, we were doing these big concert series, as I mentioned before, during Mardi Gras and Jazz Fest that were sort of festival-like. They had a name on top of them. We would program, 20, 30 shows in a, week or two period, at 10 different venues around the city, sell sponsorships and things like that. But it really wasn't a proper festival. It really wasn't until we came up with the idea for Bonnaroo, found the partners to produce that with and the capital to put it on. And that thing was, not something we expected to turn into the success it was. I mean, first and foremost, we just wanted to do it once. We thought if we could actually put something of scale on like that, it would be great for, our collective and individual careers. We wanted to get that poster with all the bands that we were really into at the time,
Yeah.
and feel like that would be just a cool thing to have and a cool part of our journey together. And again, we were really inspired by a lot of the big, festivals that had, heritage, and like the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival, like a lot of the big European festivals. It was a really interesting time in that the concert business was going through a ton of consolidation at the time. You had also some of the negative impacts of Woodstock 99 and things like that. And so a lot of the players in the general, concert promotion space were not focused on festivals. They were quite scared of festivals, actually. There was a few pieces.
Was that primarily because of Woodstock, the second Woodstock?
It was a little bit because of that, but it was more because all of the major players were kind of wrapped up in this consolidation. And they were very focused on either selling their businesses into that consolidation or being forced to sort of maximize a lot of the economics of the current businesses to serve the interests of that roll up. So these people were focused on filling their amphitheaters, filling other types of things. And as a quick history thing, actually, at the first initial phase of festivals in America in the mid to late 60s and early 70s sort of created an interesting dynamic in America where it was very difficult to produce those events afterwards because they were like kind of production disasters. And so a lot of municipalities threw up a lot of roadblocks, and there was just a negative reaction to that. And what a lot of the bigger promoters did was they built amphitheaters. So we had in America much more of like a amphitheater touring circuit during that time, not really a big festival circuit. Now in Europe, the exact opposite happened. They actually looked at what was going on over here, were inspired by it, and actually built a lot of infrastructure and best practices and things like that to produce those things at a really great level. And we're talking about Glastonbury and Roskilde and some of the legendary European festivals. So click forward 20, 30 years later, we're sitting here in America and there's no big festivals that are kind of like these multi-dimensional, multi-genre rock festivals that have a lot of modern stuff. But we're looking over in Europe and we're seeing these lineups at places like Rock Werchter and, like I mentioned, Glastonbury and Roskilde. And we're just like, oh my God, like this is amazing. Like I would love to go to one of these. And we couldn't afford to go to Europe at the time. And so there was really two other things just to reference that were
Oh, you figured you could go to Europe at the time. So let's start our
of
own.
our own, kind of. Now, there were two little pea shoots that were up. One was Coachella. Coachella started in 1999, the first year. And actually, me and my three partners, we all went to the first Coachella. And it wasn't a direct line. We didn't go there and say, come back and say, let's do our own festival. But it definitely was like, oh, this guy Paul and Golden Voice, they were doing something different and something that really we went to. I mean, we were attracted to. The other thing that was probably a little more influential actually was that the band Fish was putting on their really big festivals. And that was more in the genre and in the psychographic of where kind of we lived. We were doing a lot of that kind of experimental rock music and things that were sort of exponents of that. We were more hippies than hipsters. And we saw that Fish was putting on these amazing events, and they were really treating their customers in a very specific way. It was really about the fans. The money part, all of that was sort of, you could tell it was kind of secondary to them. They were doing this for their community. And so that was really attractive to us. And then Fish stopped playing. They went on a break and a hiatus for a number of years. And so it sort of created a window within the summer calendar where a lot of fans of those particular bands, of that particular band, were looking for a similar experience, an outdoor camping event. And we were just so knowledgeable about the audience, and we were there were a bunch of smaller, 5, 10,000 capacity regional festivals that were also kind of picking up on the same trend. And we saw all that and we were like, we should just do a really big one. And a lot of it was also because we were doing sort of similar programming during our Jazz Fest event. And so we were like, hey, let's just take a lot of the same relationships and the same bands. And if we take all of that and we bring it into a camping environment, people will want to come to that. Now, we didn't know how many people. We thought maybe 20 or 30 or 40,000 or something like that. The fortune had it that, we went on sale and we sold no marketing, literally no marketing, just some, essentially digital marketing, as you would call it today, that, was from early social media things and bands' email lists and stuff like that. And the first day we sold almost 15,000 tickets. We couldn't believe it. I mean, it was mind blowing. And we ended up selling.
Let me ask. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, just
to finish, ask you a question.
We ended up selling 70,000 tickets in 2 weeks for the festival, which blew our minds, blew all of our expectations, and then we had to get onto the hard part of actually doing it.
Yeah, exactly. So when you did that, and then we're gonna roll into the core topic of today. But this is great stuff. When you did that, it's not like you were doing a big marketing analysis in advance to see if you had the right spot, the right location, all of that. Was it more like, okay, this was a gut feeling that this could be really cool and people would be drawn to it? That's one question. Then related to that, how scary was it when you decided to do this? You put tickets up and you have no idea how many people are going to buy.
So it was somewhere between 95 and 99% gut feel, right? Now we were strategic and thoughtful about a few particular things. One was the location. So we really wanted it to be a national festival. We wanted it to be like located where most people could drive to it. And so that is the reason we ended up in Tennessee, in no small part. I mean, there are a few other reasons. We were based in the South and had some connections throughout the Southeast. But really, when we kind of thought about where this needed to be the most successful, we wanted it to be in a place where people could drive. And 75% of the US population is a day's drive, from, Nashville, essentially. It's why FedEx is in Memphis. I mean, it's just really central when you look at population density in the country. So that was a really, deliberate and specific thing. Of course, the programming, we wanted to have sort of a combination of bands that we thought would attract, a like-minded audience, but also we very much from the beginning knew that we wanted to have a diverse event too. So even the first year, I think we booked like Del McCoury, a great bluegrass artist, and Jurassic 5, a great hip hop artist. And it was never meant to just be about any particular genre. One of the things Superfly, we did really well early on was putting different bands together on different bills. We'd put 2 or 3 band bills together that were bands that you wouldn't normally, see. I remember we had like the jazz musician Pharoah Sanders open up for Medeski, Martin and Wood. We did a show with the Far Side, which was a hip hop band that was big back then, with Soul Coughing, which was kind of like a rock band that was big, and Galactic, which was a New Orleans funk band. And so we were always trying to mix and match and sort of put things together, but it was always with sort of a thought of like that there was a common thread and sensibility between the audiences and the artists. So there was a lot of deliberate stuff like that. To answer your second question, yeah, certainly it was scary, and we made a few mistakes. I'll give a quick story. Festival ticketing back then was done based on a scaled offering based on time, dates. So in other words, most tickets would be like one price if you bought it by April, and then slightly more expensive price if you bought it by May, and a slightly more expensive price if you bought it by June. So we had a similar model to that. That did not account for us selling 70,000 tickets in 2 weeks. And really, we had a big issue on our hand when we first went on sale. We were like, we could sell this whole thing out at the cheapest price and be the idiots that lost money selling out a festival. And so we actually just abruptly, kind of said, hey, quantities of that price level are sold out, and moved up to the next level. And the lucky thing was nobody cared. They just wanted to come to this thing, and they were really, it wasn't about that. So we did, mess up a bunch of things and learn some lessons about.
Well, that's a better problem to have than the other one where like you throw a party and nobody shows up.
Yeah, that's right. And look, one of the part of the story here is that we have a few partners on Bonnaroo. We had a partner who's based in Knoxville, a company called AC Entertainment. So one of the nice things about it was that they had a real local knowledge of, Tennessee and the market, and were helpful in thinking through how to do this right. And then we had a financing partner who's a guy by the name of Corin Capshaw, who's now, gone on a massive career. At the time, he was, his primary thing was being Dave Matthews' manager, and he had some other, related businesses, but he has now become one of the most prolific entrepreneurs in the whole entire entertainment business. And so, we put people around us, and we made sure we had capital to cover whatever was going to happen. And one of the things we've done well from day one is we've always paid every single bill, and we've always paid every single bill on time. Like that has been like one of our hallmarks of doing business. We don't mess around with that. We don't get involved in things that we don't have capital to make sure, we in any scenario that we can meet our commitments. We always were very much on, reputation is your most valuable thing. You can't mess around with that. And so, yeah, it was scary, but I think we knew that we were doing things right in a lot of ways.
Excellent. So that's great. And some wonderful lessons there that for a lot of you who go to these creative university sessions, that all these very successful executives that have been on and featured, there's a common thread that it's not like they had a roadmap to going from here to there. A lot of it, they just took actions that seemed logical at the time and kind of bobbed and weaved and failed. If they failed fast and moved forward. So very, very cool stories. And then, by the way, like after that, obviously Outside Lands and a number of other things, we're not going to have time to get into that, but Outside Lands, like I said, is one of my favorites, if not my favorite live event. And so for those of you who have not gone there, you got to check it out when they reopen. And actually Bonnaroo, I've never been to, but that's another story. So let's get into the topic of the day, which is, okay, all these live experiences, which is such a fundamental part of the audience's lives and our lives. And it's, my favorite thing to do. And 2020 has been such an awful year in many respects. We'll talk about the good things that come out of it, but there's obviously, while the in-home entertainment market has benefited from the fact that everybody's kind of locked down, and so people are streaming all the time, playing games and esports and things like that. Obviously, the out of home market, live experiences, live events has been decimated. And that goes also into small clubs, that especially when you talk about small clubs. And so you see a number of these shutting down around the country, and it's a terrible thing because the feds haven't come to really bail them out yet. So there's a lot of pain and suffering going on. I want to focus on on the rays of hope, because we all know that story. So first, let's talk a little bit about, just, you're an insider. What do you hear about the latest and greatest about when it's coming back? And that goes both from maybe the smaller clubs, but then to the bigger concerts and then festivals like Outside Lands and Bonnaroo. What do you hear?
I can't say I have any special insight at this point. I think everybody is still in a wait and see mode.
Yeah.
Everybody's trying to figure out where the opportunities are. Obviously, the vaccine news seems to be very positive, and I
Yeah.
think the next month or two hopefully will really tell the tale of how quickly things can come back. I think a lot of people are also wondering, how are customers going to react when they come back? I think everybody knows that there's a lot of pent up demand.
Yeah.
And there's some issues with that because there's also a lot of pent up demand for artists to be out there touring. So there's going to be a glut of things. And at the same time, are people going to be comfortable no matter what happens with the vaccine and how it unfolds, being in close quarters with one another? So I can't say I have any grand insights on when things are going to come back and exactly how they're going to come back. I'm just as in the dark in many ways as anybody else. And that's kind of part of the problem, frankly, right now, is there's just such limited ability to forecast these kind of things. Look, I'm hopeful that the third and fourth quarter, you'll start to see real live events. I don't think you're going to see any, in the first quarter. And I think the second quarter is going to be, probably unlikely as well. But I think that if there's enough vaccination, I think people will start to test stuff out, and look, people are motivated to get these things back up and running. I don't think anybody in the industry is going to wait too long to test things and get out there. And we'll just see what happens. But that's the only real perspective I have on the future of how live comes back at this point.
Yeah, I mean, this is what I'm hearing. Similar kind of things in the conversations that I have with managers and artists, that everybody was kind of anticipating that fall 2021 was going to be the earliest that things would come back, even have the possibility. And when you're organizing a tour or a festival, it's not like you can do that in 2 months. It takes a year in advance, if not more, for a lot of these things. So when you're talking about the glut and nobody knows when it is going to be safe to do that, you can imagine. So if you're thinking we're already in November or December, and if you're talking about fall of 2021, it doesn't give much time to do anything. Now, just recently, I had an interesting conversation with a pretty prominent manager who, in their mind, they believe that there's a possibility that some major shows can come back in the summertime. And one of the rays of hope that they were pointing to, but again, nobody knows if this is even going to work. Ticketmaster just recently announced that they're doing some partnerships with like IBM and Clear, so that you can use your smartphones and prove to the event that you've tested negative for COVID within 24 to 72 hours prior to the event. And only if you can show them that, they would allow you in. So that's one of the innovations. There's another company that I just read about called Blink Identity. And I don't think their tech's going to be ready for prime time, but it's facial recognition, which then, if somehow it's linked to must be COVID testing again, that only allows you in if somehow you're in the system and demonstrated that you're safe. So
yeah, that looks to be a pathway for sure. I'm involved in a company called Real Life Tech.
Okay.
And,
Yeah.
one of the things that they've built is sort of a COVID safety hub for producers that can use their technology around things like, ordering from your seats and, queuing to get into a venue and different things like that to enable, audiences to get together. Look, one of the rays of hope is that sports has sort of figured a little bit of this out, right? And certainly outdoor sports, right? Like football, when you can go to an outdoor stadium and things like that, have figured out in some capacity how to bring some live audiences. And so Real Life actually does a lot of work with sports teams. They also do a bunch of big arenas in Europe and London. And so, I do think that that is one of the things that we will see is more use of technology in a general sense to enable the live experience. This is, there's plenty of parallels for this. Nobody gets on a plane anymore, basically, without an app to help you with that experience. So I actually think this is going to be quite a good acceleration of something I think was going to happen anyway, which is some of those technologies making the live experience for music and other events even more seamless and easy to navigate and more efficient and those kind of things. So I'm hopeful that that's one of the positives that'll come out of this.
Absolutely. And that theme of so many of these trends that, to Rick's point, were already, that they were happening, like technology transforming the live event industry. And you hear this a lot in the entertainment business, different sorts of things that like movie theaters and how they're going to need to evolve. That was already happening, but the pandemic is accelerating those kinds of trends because they've become a necessity. And once the acceleration has happened, it's not like we're going back. And so the live event experience is going to be permanently changed with a lot of these things, and many of these things for the better, because of like the tech that enables, like real life tech that you talked about. If you can make it more efficient to order from where you are and mitigate the crowds and crowd control and maybe staggered entry into the venues, things like that, that could be really, really, really helpful and really interesting. So when we're talking about some of the acceleration or some of the trends you see in the live event, live music space, live event space, what is, and maybe not necessarily just live, but I'll throw it open a little bit wider than that. What are some of the trends or what some of the things that you're seeing that excite you? And then we'll talk about that a little bit. So either in the live event space or alternatives that have been accelerated because of the pandemic.
Yeah, well, the most obvious and the one that's in front of everybody's face right now is the movement of into broadcast of content, into what obviously the term live stream is the one that kind of everybody's using to describe what's going on there. This is very exciting, particularly to things that I think are helpful to the ecosystem in a general sense. Partially because I think that the general entertainment world has kind of lagged behind some of the more newer forms of entertainment in terms of interactivity in the digital realm of things. So for last couple of years, I've really followed a lot of what's gone on with the gaming space and virtual experiences that are related to that. I got involved with a company called Wave maybe about a year and a half, 2 years ago. That is kind of one of the leaders in CGI-based virtual concerts. And one of the things that really attracted me to it was that they were using a lot of gamer type interactions and techniques to create these really interesting, I thought, valuable experiences for artists to interact with audiences. And that company's really poised to have a huge impact. And in general, have just felt like there's a lot of opportunity to create experiences and meaningful entertainment opportunities that allow artists and creators to reach really wide and diverse audiences and allow fans to connect with people across all sorts of different boundaries that are kind of only available in the virtual world. And so I'm a little bit progressive on technology. I like to be involved in things that are kind of on the hopefully at least the curve itself or a little bit ahead of the curve of things like that. And what COVID has done is really accelerated, obviously in a mass way, adoption of all these things. Even look at what we're doing here. Now, I'm not sure we would have
Sure.
been doing this, 6 months or a year ago. And almost every one of my meetings right now is using video communication. People in my company
By the
know.
way, which is going to seem so basic in a very short period of time because there's so much happening in terms of development of much more compelling ways to do what we're doing.
I've managed remote teams almost my whole career.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've, probably forced too hard at times was the use of video communication. I probably spent too much money at times wiring up conference rooms and, all that kind of stuff. But I always found that when I was on video with somebody, it was much more, they were much more present and much more engaging than if I was just on an audio call. People actually are now not only using the technology, but learning how to use it in the sense
Yeah.
that they actually make eye contact.
Yeah.
On a
Makes a
video
huge
call.
difference. Huge
6 months ago, or maybe I should say a year ago, when I would do a video conference with somebody, they'd be looking over there like they're in space or something. But now people are using it so frequently that they're understanding how to use it.
Yeah.
And I think it's those kind of acceleration, those kind of trends that create a lot of promise for entertainment to transcend again, this physical space. I think with music in particular, there are interesting challenges for artists to figure out how to use these type of tools to engage audiences and make money and things like that. And I think the key thing is like musicians and performers who are emotive, who frankly are digitally native and kind of like understand from social media usage and things like that, how what does get people to want to engage. Those are the things that are going to, in my opinion at least, kind of really rise to the top as being successful here. Because if you use these tools properly and use these modes properly, you can reach people all over the world. You can bring together your community that is usually separated by distance and things like that. Think about all the places that don't have great live music clubs, for instance.
Absolutely.
There's a lot.
No.
Comedy is something I've been involved in for a long time. Think about all the places that don't have live comedy clubs.
Yeah.
So I do think that, like, rather than a big artist, who can only go to 30 or 40 cities in a tour, well, there's a lot of places that they're missing, and there's a lot of opportunity around that for people to have experiences that are real, that are thoughtful, that are engaging. Now, look, not all of the technology is there yet. And I think the next thing you'll see is a wave of technology that is, meeting the moment. Most of the technologies that people are using right now, most of the platforms that people are using right now are ones that were built pre-COVID, and they don't have the right fit for, the needs of particularly, traditional entertainment creators and performers. And so I think that's where you'll see a ton of innovation. And I think that'll be quite exciting for industry. And look, I will say, I also think that's compatible with people going to live shows.
For sure. Nothing's going to, no question about it.
Yeah, I remember like in the early, I remember early on with, digital media and entertainment that, people always said, oh, people are just going to stay home now. There's so much content you can get at home. And actually quite the opposite happened, which is because people were having so much at-home media experiences. They were learning about a lot of, artists and content and things like that, that they actually went in droves to go have experiences that were, out of house. Now, did it change some of those experiences a little bit? Absolutely. But generally in a good way. And so I think that we will see a real compatibility when live comes back with these opportunities of experiences that you can have at home.
Yeah, completely. I write about this a lot. I actually think that the driving of technology, which there's so many positives that come out of it, but in some ways it also can get isolating. And I think there's a very real human need for people to go out and into the, outside into the real world that way and interact and engage and rub shoulders together and do all that. So nothing's going to take away from the live experiences. I'm very bullish that, yes, there's going to be pain and suffering continuing in the live industry across all sectors of it, whether it's sports, theaters, et cetera, certainly music, but it's going to come back and it's going to continue on its trajectory in a very significant way because we're human beings and we need that. A couple other things that I think that you mentioned that I think are really important lessons for everybody out there, whatever role that you want to play or are playing in the media, entertainment, music business, tech industry. It's so important to understand technology and try to stay ahead of what's going on, or at least stay current with what's going on by actually like using some of the things that you're hearing about. So some of the companies that Rick's talking about, or that we'll talk about today, urge you to check them out and play with them a little bit, or get to know them so you understand the kinds of things that are happening. So it's really important to experiment. Like Rick did when he started his career. Nobody told him how to do it. They just experiment and they bobbed and weaved and made it happen. But also that's being entrepreneurial. And with things moving so fast, no matter what role you play, even if you're a musician, you got to be entrepreneurial to understand different ways you can engage with fans and bring them into your world and entertain them or engage. And one really interesting thing that you and I talked about, not in this session, but before, Rick, was that technology has demonstrated that one of the big positives is that in an almost like counterintuitive way, it can bring an artist, even a mega artist, close to their super fans for one-on-one interaction, personalized interaction that's real time. And for an artist, they can stay at home, they can scale themselves, they can line up session after session after session after session, and they can charge for it. So it's a real meaningful revenue stream. But for the fan who's willing to pay for it, like that's an exciting kind of thing. And so you see like Cameo is one service that enables that. And I think that Cameo is very cool. Although one of my kids actually paid money for a Cameo for somebody to record something, and they just didn't do it, and they still have the money. But that's a side thing. But there's a lot of that's happening that's enabled. So I think the super fan to the artist, like that kind of connection is a cool trend that we will see more of as we go forward. And it won't just be this.
Yeah, and just to kind of play off of that point and reiterate something I said before, is it's also an opportunity for people to create an event that brings together their entire community.
Yeah.
I actually was talking to, pretty substantial artists recently, and, talking to them a little bit about sort of the opportunities around this. And one of the things they said is we never really actually performed for, like, they have a global audience. They're like, we never really performed for our global audience, like all at once at one time. And, I think there's no reason why you can't at this point.
Yeah.
Now time zone differences and things like that are issues and stuff like that. But, sports is such an interesting comp for some of this. It's not necessarily the best comp in some ways, but it is an interesting one in that when, a major sporting event happens, people from all over the world can watch it simultaneously at once. Obviously things like the Grammys or other big events like that have music, people can watch it all at once. Well, if you're an artist who has a national or international audience, you can actually, and you're releasing a record, or you have a cool idea of something you want to bring to your audience, you can actually now very efficiently present something to your entire audience, and create opportunities for your audience to come together. And that's one of the things I think you're going to see a lot of evolution is the social side of some of this. People, of course, they really affiliate and they're identify with the art that they consume. If you're a fan of a particular band and you meet somebody else who's a fan of that band, you're pretty instantly like, okay, this is good. This is a person I want to maybe, get to know a little better. Right. So when you think about the context of how people meet each other socially, and look, a lot of younger people meet a lot of people digitally, and first, they have experiences with them that are digital first. Right. And so I think that the opportunity for people to meet other people across distances or even locally based on the art that they love, I think is now really available. And I think that's a place you'll see a lot of very interesting evolution.
Absolutely. I want to get into some of the advice that you have for everybody out there, because then I want to ask some of the questions that the audience asked of you, but to you, and I'm going to list a couple of things that I thought were interesting in terms of innovation, just rattle them off. One of the things you mentioned was opportunities now for a global audience. There are time zone issues, things like that. But I'll give you one experiment that I thought was very cool. And actually, I did an interview with him that you could find on the Creative University website, YouTube channel. DJ Boris Brescia, who's a global DJ out of Germany. What he did about 3 weeks ago, he did a major live stream, but from in one of the third region of the world, he did it in a certain time zone. And then 6 hours later, he did another one, the same event, but 6 hours later live, and then 6 hours later live. So he did 3 shows. So he spanned the globe. And the really cool thing that I thought was that's interesting, but he only charged €1. So €1 for it to maximize the audience, to maximize his reach. And I think that was really cool. Rather than to charge $15 or $20 for a live stream, he went a different way to open it up and be democratic.
Do it the same thing. She, her live stream, I think last week was $10, or something like that, which is on the cheaper side. And I think that's the idea. Can you get some scale,
Totally.
based on pricing and things like that. I am going to pause the video for just a hot minute while I plug my computer in, because I don't.
Of course.
And then it's running down.
No, I'll just go through a couple things. So for everybody out there, in terms of innovation, Cameo, you all know about. I think that Twitch, obviously, you all know about. Twitch, music has now become a fundamental part of Twitch. And certainly music is a fundamental part of Instagram now, and Instagram Versus has become this, these epic battles on Instagram through Versus has become a very big deal. And as I said, on January 12th, the head of music for Instagram will be joining me for this kind of conversation. So it'll be a great way to kick off the new year. Certainly the Fortnite event, immersive event with Travis Scott was a big deal. That followed the Marshmallow Fortnite event about a year earlier, which was the first big one. But Travis Scott killed it and broke a song through that Fortnite event. Over 30 million people immersed themselves in it. So certainly the idea of music coming together into virtual game or virtual worlds and games, that is something that is early on and will continue to explode. And to Rick's point before, it will not replace the live music or live event industry. It will just augment. It will be a new way for artists to be able to reach their fans. So I think that like alternatives to physical performances is a really interesting theme. Artist fan engagement and more ways to do that, and more ways for artists to earn a living by doing that while delighting their fans, because fans will pay for the access to their favorite artists. I think that's interesting. And then the overall idea of like, what TikTok's all about. People like to perform, individuals like to perform. And so, these, like on TikTok, you have the duet battles too. But the whole idea of giving more tools for everybody to be able to be part of it and be participants in music and make your own name or make your own impression. That's another theme that I think has really been accelerated and will continue to. But I want to get in because we don't have much time. And at the end, everybody, I'll stick around to talk about Creative University and answer any questions about internships and things like that. But you mentioned when we talk mental health being something that is near and dear to you. So why don't you lay that out a little bit?
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
Mental health, mental wellness and health.
Yeah, I mean, my quick spiel on this is just like for anybody, but particularly young people who, are thinking about kind of their life journey here. I would just highly recommend that you get involved in some sort of mental health wellness technique. I mean, I think most, in our society, particularly in the West, we're very cognizant of physical health and the things that you need to do to be physically healthy. Whether we do those or not, we're aware of it. Mental health is a much different thing. And I don't think, baked into sort of our general mode of society is techniques and things that help with mental health. And it's no different really. If you've got to exercise your body and put the right things in your body, and you got to do the same thing, got to exercise your mind. You've got to make sure that your mind is healthy and that you're feeding it in the same way. And so, I was very fortunate in my mid to late 20s, I became involved in meditation and have, had a real long standing practice with meditation. And it's really helped me in innumerable ways in my life and my career, almost in every aspect of things that I do. And so, the earlier that you can establish those kind of techniques and those things that keep you mentally healthy, along with being physically healthy, I think that's a super important thing to do.
I'm going to keep speaking with you about those kinds of things offline, Rick. So I build some of that into my life.
Yeah, and it's just like anything else. There is a required discipline around it. You've got to find, something that works for you. Personally, one of the things I like about meditation and the type of meditation that I practice is it really allows you to not be distracted with the things, with your mind and the health of your mind. It allows you to focus on it. And, look, you can get some mental health benefits by distracting your mind, like running or exercise or something where you kind of clear your mind a little bit by focusing on it. The difference, that I've found is that when you can actually learn how to calm your mind and be balanced and equanimous, while not being distracted, you can actually apply that very easily to almost every moment you're experiencing. And so when something good happens or bad happens, you react with thoughtful action rather than craving or aversion, wanting more of that good feeling, not wanting that bad feeling. That's generally what causes unhappiness and negativity, is trying to is wanting something to happen or not wanting something to happen. But when you can just actually recognize things for what they are and stay balanced with that, you find that almost everything you do becomes lighter and easier, and your overall happiness really increases, and then the happiness of the people around you increases because you're not causing agitation or whatever it may be. And so, look, it's a difficult thing to do. It's something that I fail at every day, but I also have found that because I've put this into my life, I end up dealing with the ups and downs, the vicissitudes of life in a much more, way that, I can be a happy person most of the time. And so, again, I really encourage people to try and find something that they can do in that regard on a regular basis. And one last thing, it is like exercise. It's not something you can just do for a few months and then just, go eat cheeseburgers, and milkshakes and, feel good. Like, it actually is one of those things that you if you're going to try and take that journey, you should try and commit as much as possible to make it an actual part of your life. Because without constantly, feeding, your mind in that way, then, it won't actually be there for you.
Yeah. Well, so, and for everybody who's out there, mental health and overall wellness is an important part of what we want to establish here at Creative University. And one of the ways we've done that, we've had some speakers, but we've had students also. And I think Anam, who is a superstar, who's actually working full-time now for a great live streaming company called Bulldog Digital Media. I think she's in this session, but she's the one who really has taken the lead in terms of doing student to student sessions. So it's, I'm not involved. It's students coming together, young people coming together. And she's going to have a list of several that are coming up in January on Saturdays, where it's not like this. It's everybody, you can see each other. So more of a meeting and more of a conversation, and you can talk about whatever issues, what you're dealing with, because everybody's dealing with a lot of stuff. Really briefly, I do need to work on some of this kind of stuff that you're talking about to really bring that into my life. Just for me, music, and maybe for a lot of people, music is my meditation. So I'm a very type A guy, as my family knows, who's my daughter who's listening in, very type A guy. But when I'm in music, like, I'm very present. I'm completely present. So that's why, and I wanted to work this in today. I just got my Spotify Unwrapped. I listened to 96,714 minutes of music this year. And that's just on Spotify. that means 67 full days of music. So that's my therapy. But in any event, let's move on to quickly. And Rick, we're gonna have to go rapid fire here. So it's gonna be like lightning round. So Noel from New York says, well, what are your thoughts on virtual concerts experiences that great companies such as Wave are creating? The performance is live somewhere, but the viewer experiences it in a virtual world, often leveraging the built-in audiences of gaming platforms. Well, we talked about that a little bit, but do you have anything just quickly to add to that?
Not really. Just that I think, we'll see more of it, and I think artists and, people in the industry who find it, who embrace it and understand it will, find more success.
Alboraz asks, with artists taking control of their live shows, where do local promoters and festivals fit in?
Yeah, I'm just a big believer that you're not going to see less live, like in person. I don't think that's what's going to happen here. I think there's going to be plenty of demand for people to go to in-person concerts. And, look, I think there's a lot of promise of connecting those two. If I've got a friend who I know is at a great club in New York and I live in San Francisco and I know that they're at that show, I actually might be more interested in watching that show because I know they're there. And I think that, look, hopefully the big vision is that there is some level of interactivity, that I can buy my friend a beer who's at that show in New York, that he goes up to the bar and, goes to buy a beer. And it's like, no, Rick already bought your beer or something like that. So I think you'll see some eventual interplay really between, at-home experiences and live experiences that I think will be pretty rich.
Chloe asks, is Superfly more interested in finding creative ways to add new revenue streams while we wait out to hold out to live events, or are you more focused on preparing for being ready to go when we can have live events again?
Well, the honest truth is Superfly doesn't do a ton of live ticketed experiences currently. Like we do serve some of our clients on our agency side in that way. We have outside lands. But we actually do a lot of other types of things, like, what I was mentioning in terms of our involvement with a lot of these, companies that are, surrounding the live ecosystem. We also have a whole location-based experience part of our business that produces, kind of walkthrough experiences like our Friends experience, after the television brand Friends, which actually, is up and operating. So we're focused on both, creating as much opportunity as we can right now, seeing the moment, and taking advantage of it. But at the same time, obviously, like everybody, we want to get back to live. And so we are having those conversations about what does it take to get outside lands going this next year? What are the protocols that need to be put in place? All that kind of stuff.
Rick, that was great. Really appreciate you being part of this and love what you've done throughout your career. And you've created amazing memories for people, because ultimately, I don't think anything creates memories like live experiences do. And that's why they're so meaningful. I know, Tim, my family and I, and our annual yearbooks that I put together are filled. We have pages that are outside lands each year, and they're like our favorite times. So that, it's very cool that you created all this, and also that you're focused on it continuing to innovate with some of the things that we talked about. So thanks.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate the time being here. Take care.